Guys, let me figure out, can I make this bigger? Nope. Edit?
We're trying to make ourselves bigger.
Okay, that didn't work. Let's just play the video. What's happening? Erase that, erase.
Well, apparently you can draw.
Apparently. Okay, how do I play this? Okay, stop. No, don't draw.
There you go.
From an entity trapped in the white space below the article itself. It was a being born into a pure white world of absolute nothingness. An entity with no name and no place, but it was somehow capable of thought. Its panicked inner monologue is readable in the hidden text, which takes the form of a rambling stream of consciousness. The being first described coming to life in this empty world with no memories of where it was or even how it got there. It spent what could have been years exploring the empty wasteland. Occasionally it would see horrific monsters pop up around it, but only for a split second. The entity continued to wander, and little by little, the existential dread mounted as it realized that it may truly be stuck here in oblivion forever. The entity only had one word to go on, a word repeated by some of the monsters it encountered: foundation. The entity had no idea what this foundation even was, but it grew to hate and fear it. Was this foundation the one that trapped it here? The entity had all the time in the world to speculate on it. Eventually, the entity found its voice. Like any sentient creature in trouble, it began to call for help, eventually screaming, just hoping someone would notice it. These pleas likely translated into the frequent IT repair tickets, a coded SOS, an attempt to show that everything was not as it appeared on the SCP-000 file. Perhaps the entity may have found help if researcher Gephardt was still working at the Foundation, but instead its cries fell on the ignorant ears of Technical Director Rosen. It may as well have been speaking to a brick wall. Rosen, who had all the investigative zeal of Paul Blart Mall Cop, made sure that these cries would never lead to the entity's freedom when he suppressed the repair tickets. He had trapped the entity in a private blank hell, forever hating a life it didn't choose and could never escape. A relentless, existential nightmare. This is the gist of your average pattern screamer. Pattern screamers are a perfect example of literally making something out of nothing. They are often a kind of floating consciousness, created from nothing, trapped in pockets of nothingness between the fabric of reality, driven mad by the purgatory-like nature of their existence. They're less living entities and more conceptual constructs, pure ideas, that just happen to be self-aware of their own existence in their private hellish voids. The SCP-00 file, a file for an anomaly that doesn't exist and thus had no reason to exist, is a perfect breeding ground for a pattern screamer. But sadly for the pattern screamer in question, Technical Director Rosen had no idea. This isn't the only time that Rosen had run into a pattern screamer without even knowing either. And just like the first case, he was with no help whatsoever. This one began with SCP-S, an otherwise empty file containing only this image. Director Winters, a Foundation administrator, wondered why this file even existed. Enter Technical Director Rosen, filled with equal parts sarcasm and insubordination. He gave a condescending reply to Director Winters, saying that the file was there to test the filing system, and the image was likely just a placeholder. Winters never should have been on the page anyway, according to Rosen. Director Winters was annoyed at Rosen's typically rude tone, and asked him to make the purpose of the article clearer in the article itself. In response, Rosen did as he was told, filling the article in the most sarcastic manner possible. The whole thing was essentially a middle finger to Director Winters for having the audacity to even ask. Rosen signed off with, "There, finished. I certainly hope I have been clear enough to anyone who may have accidentally accessed this page, through what I am sure is no fault of their own, so we won't have any more incredibly competent directors bugging the tech team about this page." And once again, technical researcher Rosen was too busy being a rude, unpleasant jerk to notice he was practically staring another pattern screamer in the face. This pattern screamer, or rather hive of pattern screamers, were trapped even deeper than the one in SCP-000. This one was hidden in the very source code of SCP-S, where a chorus of enraged voices screamed the following: "Pretend, monster, just for a minute. Pretend you were the size of an amoeba, dwarfed by even the smallest of bugs. Pretend you didn't hold the world in a glass cage. Pretend you were the one being held by something greater than yourself. Would you still be laughing at your triumphs? Would you still feel pride in what you were, even as pitifully small as you would be? Of course you would, because you are arrogant and stupid. If you haven't guessed yet, we hate you." This pattern screamer is clearly more aware of its pitiful station in existence than the 000 pattern screamer, and as a result, it's not so much depressed as it is furious. Though at this point, you've probably figured out that even the entities who have the most casual brushes with technical researcher Rosen end up getting infuriated. But while you may have gotten the impression that all pattern screamers are sad little entities worthy of our sympathy and pity, there's at least one pattern screamer that's actually incredibly dangerous. This is SCP-3930, the ultimate pattern screamer, in terms of both size and effect. It's an anomaly so strange it defies typical containment classification, and it bears a level 5 security lock, meaning only those on the level of the legendary O5 Council are cleared to even know about it. Its greatest containment procedure is the preservation of the very idea that SCP-3930 does not exist, because the alternative has terrifying implications for all involved. SCP-3930 is a 1-kilometer area in Russia that is filled with non-existence. To even call it a white void would be inaccurate, because it implies the existence of the color white and the existence of the concept of a void. Nothing exists within SCP-3930, and anyone who directly observes 3930 runs the risk of actively increasing its power. That's why special containment procedures dictate that anyone who observes 3930 must be forced to walk into it afterwards, which results in them ceasing to exist. They're destroyed on the deepest level that anything can be destroyed. The very idea of them ceases to be. Another reason that SCP-3930 is so special is that because it's the largest area of nothing in existence interacting directly with our reality, it's the only place that a huge number of pattern screamers can be directly observed by humans. They're described as being like sentient hallucinations. One researcher suggests that these pattern screamers are created by the way the psyche shatters when brought into contact with raw, true nothingness. The nothingness acts like a hateful mirror to our worst thoughts, reflecting them back at us in the forms of restless screamers. Regardless of what they actually are, one thing is for sure. Coming into direct contact with one of these screamers is a harrowing experience. In the end, it just goes to show that pattern screamers are a complex entity. They can range from microscopic to massive, from pitiful to downright terrifying. And the sad result is that, in either case, nothing can really be done to stop them. It's just as impossible to stop the nothingness existing in SCP-3930 as it is to save the entity trapped in the white spaces of SCP-000. Maybe the best option is to actually be more like Technical Director Rosen. Keep your head down, focus instead on your own petty worries, and bask in the warm bliss that can only come with having no idea what you're dealing with. The one downside is that this may make you a pretty lousy IT guy. Now check out SCP-5000Y, the full story compilation, and SCP-001, which...
Let's watch another one. That was only it. Let's watch SCP-999.
Okay.
999. Okay, let me put my...
Are we still recording?
Oh yeah, we're recording.
Okay. Tickle Monster.
This one.
Almost all cross-testing to kill or pacify
Oh, it's slow.
I think SCP-3930 is
SCP-682. Almost all cross-testing to kill or pacify SCP-682 had failed miserably. If you haven't seen it, go watch our video on the legendary hard-to-kill reptile to see just how powerful and terrifying this creature is. It faced the Gate Guardian.
If you want to do a speech right now, that would be it. Don't pause it.
Okay, Crosby is going to the bathroom, but I'm going to summarize basically what I've learned which is that Rosen is a terrible worker, and he could be helping all of these SCPs that are stuck in purgatory, but he's too lazy listening to music, chewing bubblegum, and kicking his feet up on the desk, which is really rude, by the way, to put your feet on the desk, that they keep being stuck. That's pretty much what I learned. So and then I think where it's going is that SCP-3930 is extremely evil, that it has to be kept in a void. But I believe that if that could be out of the void, it could definitely
Kill humanity.
Kill Rosen. Don't kill humanity. Just kill Rosen. We don't need everybody dead, but Rosen's useless, so get rid of him.
Also, Rosie.
No, this has nothing to do with Rosie, which is my dear Chihuahua and Crosby's cousin.
No, it's not my cousin.
But I think
that thing is not my cousin.
SCP-000 could be freed if they killed Rosen. That's my guess.
No.
That's just my guess, Crosby.
But what about this? He's still in the void. He's in another universe.
Right, but
he's not in next door. You're not just gonna open the door. Oh,
CP-000. But I think that he's. They put little. Okay, when they draw little devil horns on 3930, that means he's evil. Evil genius means he has the ability to get out of the void. And you know what? Okay, here we go. Rosen is so stupid and useless that Rosen's gonna do something to open up the void and let him out. I bet you that's it.
I bet that could happen. That could happen.
All right, let's
An SCP with a flaming sword hotter than the sun, capable of tearing your atoms to shreds, and came out fine. In its face-off with the horrifying SCP-096, also known as the Shy Guy, it broke the Shy Guy's mind and reduced it to gibbering despair. Even SCPs with supposedly unlimited powers simply refused to engage the beast in combat. So, when it was proposed that they test 682 with SCP-999, a creature known among Foundation staff as the Tickle Monster, the idea was considered laughable. 682 had been burned, suffocated, cut up, incinerated, and growled in the faces of the gods. How could this so-called Tickle Monster ever hope to survive an encounter, let alone win a fight? Some even believe that this was the last we'd see of SCP-999. But what makes this story truly remarkable is that that isn't how this played out. As you'll soon discover, SCP-999 is an amazing and unique SCP in and of itself. But its secret origins and its interactions with some other prominent figures in the SCP universe are what make this humble, slimy creature beyond extraordinary. Prepare yourself for the heartwarming, yes, you heard that right, the heartwarming story of SCP-999. Several highly trained agents on 682 Detail placed 999 into the immortal lizard cell. Compared to the giant reptilian sitting across from it, 999 wasn't much to look at. It's a large orange amorphous blob of anomalous slime. Weighing in at around 120 pounds, SCP-999 was nothing compared to the monstrosity it was supposed to face. While its weight has, in the past, caused minor injuries to some of its human handlers, it has never caused serious or long-lasting damage of any kind to a living thing. Even its diet consists only of candy and sweets, with a particular preference for M&Ms and Necco wafers. It consumes these treats through the cell membrane of its slimy body, much like an amoeba. This extremely stretchy membrane means the creature is highly malleable, including the ability to stretch and flatten itself out to a mere 2 centimeters thick. At rest, the creature takes a dome-like shape around 2 meters wide and 1 meter in height. The closest things the creature has to limbs are prehensile pseudopods. Those are the arm-like projections normally seen on single-celled organisms, of which it has at least 3. The more you hear about this utterly harmless creature, the more that matching it up with the pure embodiment of absolute hatred known as SCP-682 feels downright cruel. In absolute contrast to the misanthropic attitudes of the reptile, 999 loves humans. It has a playful dog-like attitude. Much like an overexcited puppy when approached, 999 will react with extreme joy and slither towards the nearest person in order to interact. It will leap onto them, using 2 of its 3 prehensile pseudopods to hug the person, while while the third nuzzles the person's face, emitting high-pitched cooing and gurgling noises throughout. The creature is apparently pleasant in every conceivable fashion, as even its odor has been reported to smell just like the favorite scent of whoever is smelling it. Example.
Okay, so Daisy, right there, you can't see her. She went right next to Woozy, and Woozy's like.
Because she had a bone buried and she was scared that Daisy would get the bone. So it's out of fear.
There was no bone there.
But basically what I'm saying is she's misunderstood. And so maybe that evil monster reptile thing is misunderstood. That's all I'm saying. And maybe the love from the SCP-999. Oh, or he tickles, because he tickles and makes him laugh, and they become friends, maybe.
Examples have included chocolate, fresh laundry, bacon, roses, and Play-Doh.
Wait, what's
It's almost impossible to abort. The third nuzzles the person's face, emitting high-pitched cooing and gurgling noises throughout. The creature is apparently pleasant in every conceivable fashion, as even its odor has been reported to smell just like the favorite scent of whoever is smelling it. Examples have included chocolate, fresh laundry, bacon, roses, and Play-Doh.
Mine would be Dr.
It's
Pepper.
almost impossible to oversell just how beloved and benevolent this strange creature is. It's one of the rare sapient SCPs to earn the safe class, and it's allowed to roam freely around its facility at all times, apart from a 1-hour bedtime period between 8 and 9 p.m. In the rare instances that 999 has caused harm to a worker at the facility, it immediately began to back away and contract its body while whimpering in a kind of dog-like apology. The closest the Foundation has ever come to having a real incident with the creature was the time someone accidentally fed it a can of caffeinated cola, causing it to become hyper for an hour before becoming visibly queasy. You'll be relieved to know that it's since made a full recovery.
Don't blame
But what would
Pepper.
happen when this whimsical creature is forced to go toe-to-toe with the Foundation's most ill-tempered monster? The employees observing the test watched in suspense as 999 began to enthusiastically slither towards 682. It's no surprise that after being tortured and almost killed hundreds of times during testing, 682 had grown jaded to the cross tests it was regularly subjected to. When it saw this strange orange blob squelching across the ground towards it, it sighed and groaned, expecting the worst. "What is that?" the creature asked of its gelatinous guest. SCP-999 began jumping up and down in front of 682 like an excited puppy, creating a high-pitched squealing noise. Just as it regarded all living things, 682 thought the creature bouncing around before it was disgusting and hardly worth the effort to destroy. Was the Foundation even trying anymore? With a single vicious stomp, 682 flattened the friendly creature beneath one of its feet. Observers were prepared to charge in and liberate 999 from under 682's claws. But then something truly unexpected happened. The expression on 682's acid-eaten face began to slowly change. It was beginning to smile. Observers recorded a noise what they thought could have been a chuckle as the creature growled and said, "What is this? I feel good." While the observers looked on, stunned at what was happening, 999 began to slither and crawl up from between 682's toes, reformed on its scaly leg and slithered up along its side until it reached the neck. There it began to nuzzle like it had never nuzzled before. The results spoke for themselves. 682 was grinning and chuckling, repeating a phrase that the Foundation never would have imagined coming from 682. "Feel so happy. Happy.
Made him happy.
Happy. Happy." Just when you thought SCP-999 couldn't possibly be more adorable, you learn about its greatest power, bringing joy. Anyone and anything that comes into contact with the creature, even in passing, will experience a kind of mild euphoria. As one's contact with the creature is prolonged, this overwhelming sense of joy increases and continues long after you've separated from it. Prolonged contact has completely cured depression, anxiety, and PTSD, along with a number of other conditions, including rage and antisocial personality disorders. Serial killers practically become saints after coming into prolonged contact with 999. And in that moment, 682 was no exception. And there truly does not appear to be no exceptions. While causing happiness and joy isn't a dangerous weapon, when it comes to SCP-999, it is an extremely powerful one. And what's more, SCP-999 also appears to have an innate sense for those who need its help most, with a particular affection for the hurt and the unhappy. The creature appears to be a true altruist on a fundamental level, even risking its own safety to help humans during dangerous containment breaches. In one dramatic instance, 999 leaped into the air to block a bullet from making contact with a member of staff. As a result, the creature is pretty much universally loved by all members of Foundation staff. It's the one SCP who has never made trouble for anyone. Back in SCP-682's containment cell, the beast was still smiling and laughing as 999 rubbed against its neck. It was an event so strange, so unprecedented, that the observers in attendance felt like they were hallucinating. For a few minutes, the monster kept dreamily repeating the word, happy. But then, suddenly, the creature began to enter a fit of uncontrollable, booming laughter. It rolled onto its back, slamming its huge tail against the door. It had just fallen victim to one of 999's favorite pastimes, tickle fights, hence how it earned its Tickle Monster nickname among staff. The tickle fight continued until 682 appeared to tire and fall asleep, with a smile still on its face. After 15 minutes of inactivity, 2 D-Class personnel were commanded to enter and retrieve SCP-999 from the containment cell. They did so successfully, but as soon as 999 was removed, 682 roused from its slumber and released a powerful psychic attack from its entire body while laughing maniacally. It rendered all personnel within a certain distance incapacitated, as they collapsed in fits of laughter, allowing 682 to escape and go on a violent rampage. However, in spite of this, 999 showed no fear and helped save some of the bystanders as security officers subdued and recaptured 682. And even after all of this, 999 showed no hard feelings towards 682 and indicated a desire to play again. It's a creature whose capacity for love is so limitless that it's practically immune to fear. Which is all well and good, because the true enemy that 999 is destined to face is infinitely more powerful and terrifying than 682 could ever hope to be. What is this monster? And why should 999 have to face it someday? The answers to these questions all lie in the true origins of SCP-999, available only to those with level 5 clearance and beyond. It's a perfect example of how something good can come from the darkest places. There would be no SCP-999 without SCP-231-7. SCP-231 was a collection of 7 girls, all impregnated by horrific nightmares in a ritual performed by a cult known as the Children of the Scarlet King. Each of these girls, over the years that followed, gave birth to some of the most horrific monsters imaginable. One of which, according to some, was SCP-682. These beings were manifested by the Scarlet King, a powerful interdimensional nightmare god, believed to be behind a great deal of the darkness and horror present within our and many other dimensions. Foundation higher-ups have declared the Scarlet King to be the greatest existing threat to the multiverse at large. And SCP-231 was his latest direct interaction with our universe. The only surviving member of SCP-231, SCP-231-7, gave birth in secret. But she didn't give birth to a monster. She gave birth to SCP-999, a being of pure goodness. That's right. The nicest, kindest, cuddliest SCP of all is the direct descendant of a being that's essentially the dark god of all evil. Feel free to take a moment to absorb that. The creature even healed the girl who birthed it, and allowed her to return to normal life with her family once more. From its first moments, SCP-999 was making positive changes to the world around it. And according to ancient texts from a Scarlet King-aligned culture known as the Deivas, SCP-999 is still very much in its infancy, yet it already has the power to pacify its monstrous siblings like the aforementioned 682. It's believed, according to some prophecies and Foundation theories, that the power of SCP-999 will grow exponentially as it matures. Why does this matter? Well, it's some prophecies and Foundation theories that the power of SCP-999 will grow exponentially as it matures. Why does this matter? Well, it's believed by some that one day, 999 will grow powerful enough to overthrow not only its own monstrous siblings, but the thought-to-be unstoppable Scarlet King himself. Not through violence or hate, but through the pure force of happiness and love burning out the darkness and purifying the corrupted. While the humble SCP-999 rarely outshines its frightening competitors, to those truly in the know, 999 is one of the most powerful and valuable SCPs in existence. and may be the greatest asset in the Foundation's arsenal for the war against dangerous anomalous activity. After all, what could strike more fear into their hearts than the knowledge that it might be love rather than firepower that finally dethrones the Scarlet King? And for the knowledge that it may one day save everything we know from a fate so much worse than death, with nothing but affection for everyone and everything, it's worth offering thanks to the little orange blob, or at least an extra pack of M&Ms before bedtime.
M&Ms! So I think we've learned that we need to stop shooting at things and love them instead.
Should we watch one more?
Yeah.
Let's watch SCP-5000.
Okay.
Pietro Wilson tossed and turned as the nightmares from the previous day filled his dreams. In his restless sleep, he watched the slaughter of his colleagues at Site 22. The unknown men who entered the facility had gunned down everyone who worked there. Everyone except Pietro. He remembered running deeper into the facility, only to be cornered in a windowless concrete room. There he had found SCP-5000, an exclusionary suit that allowed him to become undetectable to human senses. It was a step beyond invisibility. He successfully made it out of Site 22, but the eyes of the men he killed to get away haunted him. Pietro had never taken a life before. The only solace was that it felt like the suit he was wearing had taken over, so his actions were not technically his own. But he had to wonder, what would he have done without the suit? Would he still have killed another human to escape? After leaving the facility, Pietro had made his way to an SCP safe house. This was where he now lay. The slaughter of hundreds at Site 22 was bad, but what he found when he turned on the news at the safe house was worse. SCPs had been let loose around the world and were killing people by the millions. What was going on? Pietro was startled awake from a nightmare. He was hyperventilating, but his body almost immediately recovered and his breathing slowed. A heads-up display flashed on in front of his eyes. Pietro Wilson was still contained within SCP-5000. The suit would not let him go. He instinctively went to rub his eyes, but the metal hands of the suit just clanked against the helmet that covered his head. He wanted out of this suit. Pietro stood up and walked over to the television. He reached out to turn it on, but paused. He thought, do I really want to see how bad things have gotten since I fell asleep? But he had to know. He was filled with dread as the TV came on and he saw the first images. The world looked as if it was ending, and it seemed like the SCP Foundation was responsible. How could this be? They were supposed to protect humanity, not destroy it. Pietro needed to uncover the truth behind what was happening. SCP-5000 had a log entry function that he could use to record everything he uncovered. Even if he didn't make it out of this alive, maybe one day someone would find the suit and be able to access what he had learned. The date of his first journal entry was February 1st, 2020. As Pietro watched the carnage unfold on TV, he began to put together the pieces of what he had witnessed himself. He knew a special ops squad had executed everyone at Site 22 where he worked. He knew that the SCPs had been let loose. He knew the world was ending. But why? As Pietro pondered this, a newscaster appeared. What you have just witnessed are reports from around the world of monsters ravaging cities and towns. This all started with a mysterious message from an organization that calls itself the SCP Foundation. Their ruling body, named the O5 Council, released the following statement. For those who are not currently aware of our existence, we represent the organization known as the SCP Foundation. Our previous mission centered around the containment and study of anomalous objects, entities, and other assorted phenomena. This mission was the focus of our organization for more than 100 years. Due to circumstances outside of our control, this directive has now changed. Our new mission will be the extermination of the human race. There will be no further communication. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The SCP Foundation had declared war on the human race. How could this be? What had led to the O5 Council changing their entire mission from protecting humanity to ending it? Could it be possible that a powerful SCP had taken control or influenced the Council's decision? Pietro turned on the radio, flipped through TV channels, and scoured the internet for information on what had happened over the past 24 hours. The first image he saw was a human-like creature with arms and legs twice as long as they should have been, with deep black eyes and a mouth curled up into a silent scream, showing teeth as sharp as razor blades. From the files he could access, Pietro learned that this was SCP-096. a creature that was docile until someone saw its face, at which point the SCP would start to shriek and cry before hunting down whoever saw its face and slaughtering them. He quickly changed the channel. The file said that even if SCP-096 was seen on a screen, it would find the viewer and tear them limb from limb. Surely that couldn't be true. There were potentially millions of people who had just seen it on TV. What would happen to them? What would happen to him? On the next channel was footage of a gigantic animal in the middle of the ocean. This was SCP-169, a leviathan from the Precambrian era. The creature was around 5,000 kilometers long and slowly swam just below the surface of the ocean. The feed suddenly changed to footage of devastating tsunamis and destruction caused by earthquakes. When SCP-169 had been awoken from its slumber by the Foundation, detonating nukes on its back, it began trying to escape the danger. The movement of the massive creature caused natural disasters, destroying coastal communities around the world. On another channel, Pietro was watching as the Chancellor of Germany gave a speech, announcing that the country was declaring war on the SCP Foundation. Off camera, the sound of a tinkling bell could be heard. A man dressed as a Victorian-era butler entered and picked up a pen from the Chancellor's desk. He approached the Chancellor and raised the pen in the air as the camera cut away, but the sound of gunshots and yelling could be heard before the feed went dead. The news reported that similar events involving world leaders by the exact same butler had been occurring since the SCP Foundation changed its mission. Pietro searched through the suit's files to try and figure out what was happening, and found that SCP-662 must have been connected. Next was a strange skin disease plaguing New York and Delhi designated SCP-610 that covered its host in rashes and boils before seeking to take over their bodies. Finally, some good news though, as the outbreak looked to be contained by the combined efforts of the Global Occult Coalition and the Church of the Broken God. And then some bad news, as SCP-682 had also been released. A massive crocodilian monster, its sole mission was to destroy all life. It was fueled by hatred for living things, making it the perfect tool of the O5 Council's new stated mission. Pietro had heard rumors of SCPs that could instantly end the world, but clearly the Foundation hadn't gone down this route. Yet. Did they want to keep the rest of the planet intact? Or maybe there were holdouts in the SCP Foundation who were trying to stop the O5 Council from carrying out their mission. All Pietro knew was that right now, there were some real nasty SCPs running around, wreaking havoc. Pietro suddenly heard an explosion in the distance, far away, but still close enough to make him nervous. Maybe he was better off staying in the safe house and waiting out the apocalypse. The suit was keeping him healthy, nourished, and undetectable to foes. Any sane person would have remained there in seclusion and safety, but Pietro needed answers. He felt it was his responsibility to log and try to make sense of everything the SCP Foundation was doing. He brought up a map of SCP sites in the area on his display. The closest was Site 19. It was time to venture out into the end of the world and find some answers, but he was about to be faced with even more questions. On the way to Site 19, Pietro came across something strange. A squad of Foundation soldiers in a clearing. They were standing at attention as their commander paced back and forth, up and down the line. The soldiers' uniforms had the insignia MTF Epsilon 6 embroidered on them. The commander stopped in front of the first soldier in the line, clapped her hands, and informed the soldier she would be beginning the check now. The commander pulled out a long knife and plunged it into the soldier's shoulder. Strangely, the soldier did not move, make a sound, or react in any way. She moved on to the next soldier and repeated the process. This continued down the line until she reached the 8th soldier. This time, when the commander stabbed the shoulder of the soldier, he noticeably winced and cried out in pain. The commander shouted, "Got a live one!" Pietro watched as the soldiers raised their guns and fired at the one who had cried out. He dropped to the ground. The commander moved on to the last soldier and put the knife in his shoulder. There was no reaction. "All right, we're clear," yelled the commander. "Let's move out." Pietro waited until the squad was out of sight and made his way to the corpse lying on the ground. He scavenged weapons and basic medical supplies. Then he buried the body and recorded what he had seen in SCP-5000's log. He had no idea why the soldier was killed, or why the others didn't feel pain. Maybe they weren't human at all. Maybe it was a squad of SCPs that had a human infiltrate their ranks. None of this makes sense, Pietro thought, before continuing on. Upon reaching Site 19, Pietro found it in disarray. And worse, practically all of the SCPs that were held at the site had breached containment. He was able to walk into the compound unnoticed. And deep in the facility, he found scientists and researchers going about their business as if they had no idea what was happening out in the world. They must have been following the orders of the O5 Council. Pietro listened in on conversations about how to create the maximum number of human casualties and which SCP should be released next. He felt a deep hatred for the people in the facility. How could they be so casual about wiping out humanity? As he observed more of the workers at Site-19, he noticed something strange. Everyone's eyes were cold and dead, like there was no humanity left in them, as if something had got to these scientists and removed the very souls from their bodies. Pietro stealthily stole a senior staff member's credentials and found an empty office where he could access logs from the facility to try to get a better idea of the timeline of events that led to the SCP Foundation's war on humanity. He logged into the mainframe and brought up the entries from the end of the previous year. He found that late in 2019, a project called Numa became of great interest to the O5 Council. From what Pietro could tell, the project had something to do with the collective human consciousness, also called the psychospace. Apparently, SCP researchers had a breakthrough in mapping out the psychospace. Unfortunately, many of the files had been redacted, and there was no way for Pietro to access the unredacted version. After Numa had been brought to the attention of the O5 Council, a series of orders were sent out to all senior staff and site directors. But frustratingly, these orders had also been redacted. All he could see was that after the orders were sent out, a wave of resignations were submitted across the Foundation. Suspiciously, a wave of suicides had also occurred at roughly the same time. What was in these orders? The O5 Council then sent out a number of files to all senior staff and site directors with instructions to disseminate the materials among those serving under them, after which both the resignations and deaths immediately ceased. Pietro searched everywhere for what was in those files, but like so much of the SCP database, this information had been redacted as well. What was clear was that the SCP Foundation had begun gearing up for the extermination of humanity the following year. The entry log for February 1st, 2020 read, "Mobile task forces are dispatched to all exclusionary sites to execute all personnel. Immediately following the conclusion of these missions, the Foundation declares war on humanity." This was where Pietro Wilson's journey had started. He slammed his hands down on the computer monitor in frustration. The suit absorbed all of the impact and crushed the monitor in half. Pietro moved to a new non-smash computer and logged in again. This time he brought up the most current entries to see what the O5 Council was up to recently, to see if there were some answers in the present. The SCP Foundation had been busy while he was making his way to Site-19. They had released SCP-1048 in Paris, which now led a horde of bears down the Champs-Élysées. In the distance, Pietro thought he could almost make out a massive red teddy bear walking between the buildings. The SCP Foundation was also launching counterattacks on any organization that tried to oppose them. They used SCP-1290 to hurl projectiles at the Global Occult Coalition's base. They were also using SCP-1440 to brainwash people and convince them that they needed to riot. This caused widespread destruction as people panicked and were trampled to death. Pietro thought it was sad that such a kind-looking old man could cause so much destruction. He recorded as much as he could before deciding that it was time to get out of Site-19. Although SCP-5000 still made him undetectable, he couldn't shake the feeling that the lifeless eyes of the staff were beginning to look his way more and more often. As Pietro exited Site-19, the sky glowed orange with the fires of countless burning buildings. He needed to find more answers. He needed to uncover the reason the SCP Foundation was trying to wipe out humanity. He had learned a lot from Site-19 and was sure that if he could just get to the next site, he would finally be able to figure out the Foundation's motive and maybe even how to stop them. He took a step forward, but his heads-up display suddenly went completely dark. The suit constricted tighter around his body, slowing the blood flow to his brain. He couldn't move as his vision got dimmer and dimmer and dimmer until he blacked out. Pietro woke to find himself halfway across the country. It had been 3 months since he had been at Site-19, and he had no recollection of anything that had happened since. His body had taken a toll in these months. He had new scars and a bandage wrapped around his head, but the SCP-5000 suit did not seem to have a scratch on it. Strangest of all, though, was the briefcase that Pietro had in his hand. and the uncontrollable need to deliver it to the mysterious SCP-579.
I think he's brainwashed.
That's it? Okay, we'll watch the suitcase, the next debunking video. This is Cactus Family. Peace.